was once perhaps the world's most glamorous tourist destination, frequented by the world's most glamorous stars, the holiday destination for Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton, Raquel Welch and Brigitte Bardot. Now, though, Varosha on the island of Cyprus, like a tourist ghost town, a mass of hotels and luxury boutiques in ruins, peppered by rubble. Cyprus is surely one of the planet's most beautiful islands, full of rugged mountains, picturesque countryside and steeped in history from the Assyrians, Egyptians, Persians and Romans. But after years of political disputes and bloody conflicts, in 1974, in response to a military coup backed by the Greek government, Turkey invaded the north of the island, including Varosha. Well, since then, Cyprus has been split. The northern part with the Turkish Cypriot government, the southern part governed by the internationally recognised Greek Cypriot government. Former residents are now once again able to visit Varosha, but it has become, well, a real symbol for the island's problems. Close to 40,000 Greek Cypriots claim to own property there. And although the Northern Turkish Republic has set up a tribunal to try to settle disputes, there is also an added complication. FCAF, a Muslim foundation that claims to be the sole owner of Varosha since the Ottomans took control of the island right back in 1571. Well, for France 24, Shona Bhattacharyya and Ludovic de Foucaud revisit Varosha for France 24.
A former resort town, famous the world over, lies in ruins. This was once one of its most upscale hotels.
So what you can see here is the Golden Mariana when it was operating.
At the time, the Greek Cypriot Lordos family was the biggest property owner in Varosha. Andreas, who expects to inherit the hotel, was 6 years old when Turkish forces bombed the town.
I had a plastic gun, and I was trying to contribute to our defense. I held on to the little plastic gun until we had to leave Varosha in a real hurry, with the military airplanes bombing and with my very worried mother saying that if we encounter a military plane, I will stop the car, you jump out, I will come back for you.
Andreas claims ownership of the hotel. He saw it again for the first time a year and a half ago. He also tried to enter the apartment where he spent his childhood, but he was briefly arrested. It is illegal to trespass in what is considered a military zone.
Time will play its course. It has played its course. And every minute that we are kept out hurts. We just want to come home and live in peace.
Time came to a halt in Varosha 48 years ago. In 1974, the Turkish army had not planned on taking the resort town, but when it found it emptied of its inhabitants, it decided to occupy it. Varosha, or Marash in Turkish, is now situated in the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, the TRNC, an entity only recognized by Ankara. It's home to one of 2 Turkish army bases on the island. Up to 30,000 Turkish soldiers are reported to be stationed there. In October 2020, 2 streets were opened to the public, and less than a year later, the Turkish president announced parts of the town were to be handed over to civilian authorities. The UN Security Council considered the move to be a provocation. Varosha's former residents fear that now that it's in civilian hands, the former resort won't be transferred to the Greek Cypriot authorities if an agreement is found as was initially planned. Instead, it may be integrated into the TRNC. Recep Tayyip Erdogan promised the property issue would be solved once and for all.
Life will return to Marash. The doors of a new era will open in Marash. That will benefit all in accordance with studies on property rights.
A kind of dark tourism has emerged, with bike rentals, new cafes, playgrounds, and a beach volley court in the shadow of empty buildings on the verge of collapse. Ankara claims that in the year and a half since Varosha has partially reopened, more than 400,000 visitors have walked these streets. Streets that Ibrahim Benter says are owned by EFKAF, a Muslim charitable foundation from the Ottoman era that brings together more than 2,000 other foundations.
What you are seeing here is that all these lands belong to EFKAF.
According to Professor Benter, EFKAF has owned Varosha since 1571, when Ottoman forces took control of the island. He claims that the ownership of the land by foundations, or vakafs, was deliberately ignored under British colonial rule from the end of the 19th century until 1960.
What we see is the Toyota building, and showing that in 1913, this plot belonged to Abdullah Pasha Vakıf. So when we come to 1936, suddenly in the title deeds, the name of the Vakıf is no longer mentioned.
Some properties, like this recently renovated mosque, are undisputed by the Greek side. Its ownership by the foundation is clearly established.
Sometimes they give their...
To back its claims of total ownership over Varosha, EFKAF has appealed to the European Court of Human Rights to no avail. It is now trying to convince a court in Turkish Cypriot-controlled Nicosia, the IPC.
You know...
Then there's the payment of £1.5 million that Britain paid to the Turkish Cypriot administration in return for EFKAF's properties. But according to Professor Benter, Muslim Foundation's ownership of land is written in stone.
It's not 100 years, it's not 1,000 years, it's forever. You cannot sell it, you cannot sell Vakıf property, you cannot give it as a gift. Under any circumstances, the freehold of a Vakıf property cannot be changed.
It's an argument former Varosha residents refuse to accept. They elect a municipality in exile for Famagusta, the city to which Varosha belongs. The Greek Cypriot administration of Famagusta is located in Limassol, 120 kilometers to the south and on the other side of the UN Green Zone. Mayor in exile Simos Ioannou believes the administration of Northern Cyprus is using EFKAF as a cover to claim its own sovereignty over Varosha.
The problem is, they're trying to solve the issue not in a political way, but in a legalistic way. It's something they can never do at the European Court of Human Rights, and so they revived this EFKAF story.
According to a 1984 UN resolution, Varosha must be returned to its original owners, a decision that has been ignored until now by politicians on both sides of the Green Line, nor has it been enforced by the United Nations itself. Mert Kan Hamit, a Turkish Cypriot political analyst, met us in the centuries-old port of Famagusta. He says its famous quarter, Varosha, was used as a bargaining chip for decades.
The Turkish Cypriot position was, when you want to reach the comprehensive settlement, this will be given. But, you know, with the Ersin Tatar, things changed. I mean, Turkish Cypriot side claims that it's under the TRNC's sovereignty. But it's not. It's under the Turkish military forces' rule.
Former Turkish Cypriot governments offered to return Varosha to its residents several times over the years. But in October 2020, nationalist Ersin Tatar was elected president. He is more closely aligned with Ankara than any previous Turkish Cypriot leader, and his goal is for the TRNC to be considered an independent country, a goal this Famagusta resident says is highly unlikely.
How we establish TRNC is against international law at every stage. So it's really hard to justify the recognition from legal and also political sense. The fundamental principle at the moment lies under the image is nothing is agreed unless everything is agreed. In both sides, some of the political elites present themselves and their existence relies on the division of the country, not the unification.
When the Ottomans took control of the port of Famagusta in the 16th century, its Christian residents, most of them Greek-speaking, were expelled from the city. They went on to establish a new neighborhood, Varosha, or suburb in Turkish. For the 1974 refugees, the past is repeating itself. Ana Marangu now lives in Nicosia. She blames politicians in both the north and the south for the stalemate.
Residents of Famagusta are dying more and more. Maybe that's what the government is waiting for, so that we're no longer attached to this town. My kids and grandkids certainly don't have the same link with the town that I have. I'm the one fighting, but I don't know how many more years I can fight.
In her library, the historian has kept meticulous records of her home in Varosha.
So my house is here. It says that since 1974, we can only see Famagusta from afar. I don't call it Varosha. I don't like using the Turkish name.
She mounted a case with the Immovable Property Commission more than a decade ago.
Here it is, 2011. Here's my file. And I received this.
Affirmation of ownership of Turkish occupied immovable property.
I don't have my deed. It was left behind in Famagusta.
Unlike the vast majority of refugees who demand compensation for their properties, the 71-year-old is asking the IPC for restitution of her home. She says she would live there even if Varosha were to remain under the control of the Turkish Cypriot administration.
I won't get my books back. I won't get my parents back. I won't find what I left. That's for sure. It'll be something different. But there are a number of crazy people like me. You have to be a bit crazy in life, and I'm haunted by the idea of returning to Famagusta.
More than 7,000 cases have been filed with the Immovable Property Commission since it was founded in 2006 in accordance with the standards of the European Court of Human Rights. Claimants are Greek Cypriots who were forced to flee their homes, now located in areas under Turkish Cypriot control. They can ask for restitution, compensation, or property exchange. Over 1,300 of those cases have been settled, but not a single one so far has involved property in Varosha. A mere coincidence, says the IPC president.
We at the IPC actually do not discriminate on a case based on its location. We don't say that this is a Marash application, we need to treat it differently. So if the case is ready with all necessary documents, then we can proceed. At the same time, the applicants also need to follow up on their cases.
Every property that is compensated is legally in the hands of the TRNC. Those hoping for reunification fear that with these court decisions, the island's split becomes more and more irreversible, leading to a two-state solution. Ana Marangu has decided not to wait for a decision from the IPC. Every weekend, she takes Greek Cypriots on tours to the northern part of the island, where 70% of its historical sites are located. On this day, she takes a few dozen people to see a church-turned-museum, St. Barnabas, named after the saint who brought Christianity to the island in the 1st century.
If we can encourage young people to understand, to accept and to love their heritage, the future might have a chance. It's not easy for now, but we will persist.
The tour has become a way for some visitors to return to the north for the first time in decades.
I hadn't been to this side in 50 years. I came back for the first time last week. Last Saturday, we went to Famagusta. I come from New Famagusta. I haven't been back yet to see what it's become. I don't think I'm brave enough yet. I need more time to decide to go and see it.
Marangu organizes the tour with the help of a Turkish Cypriot colleague, Orhan Tulun. He is also doing his part to remind residents on both sides of the island of their commonalities.
The cultural is more strong than religion and language. But of course, the nationalist people, the politicians, always they are saying we have different religion, we have different language. This is so important. But as a Cypriots, for us is not important.
By encouraging dialogue and the discovery or rediscovery of a shared heritage, Anna, the Greek Cypriot, and Orhan, the Turkish Cypriot, hope to nudge their fellow citizens on the path toward reconciliation. Throughout its history, this strategic island has been invaded, occupied, colonized, and claimed by nations and empires from around the Mediterranean basin and beyond. As a European enclave at the gates of the Middle East, today Cyprus remains as contested as ever.
Shona Bhattacharyya and Ludovic Foucaud revisiting Varosha for France 24. Well, that's all from this week's edition. You can catch it and all the previous editions as well on our website at france24.com. There's more news coming up very shortly. Thanks for watching.